Hello there. This is a talk I did at PlannerCon Europe 2017 recently. Whilst the actual talk in terms of words that I actually use in this presentation aren't going to be identical, they'll be fairly close, I think. So I hope you enjoy sort of listening to what I have to say, and the message is roughly the same. So my talk is entitled Choosing or Designing the Perfect Planner. Planner in this case is a fairly generic term. It covers all different types of paper planners. So to get started, about 50 years ago, in December 1967 to be exact, the Beatles, that well-known pop group, released an album, a short album rather, called Magical Mystery Tour, which was also a film, in fact, as well. And I'd like you to join me on a magical mystery tour in search of the perfect planner. Now, I want this short talk to sort of fuel your imagination in looking for the perfect planner. And together we'll try and discover what the perfect planner is for you. You might actually already own the perfect planner. You might even be using it too. So I want you to actually think of things you like about your current planner, as well as the things that you don't like. So the perfect planner, does it exist? And if it does exist, what is it actually going to do for you? So what is the perfect planner? So I wrote down some notes just before I gave the talk at PlannerCon, and I came up with these. The perfect planner can help you achieve planner peace, if that exists. It's a planner that you want to use, a planner that helps you meet your goals and targets, be it on a daily or weekly basis. A planner that will help you reduce your stress and anxiety levels, because you're writing things down and you're using your planner. It will help you not have to worry about, did I remember to do this, or will I remember to do that sort of thing. It's a planner that you will not want to keep swapping out of. And it will reduce your desire to keep wanting to buy new planners. This, of course, is not good news for the sellers, but never mind, eh? And, of course, there is no reason why you can't decorate the perfect planner. That is perfectly acceptable. And I know a lot of people that do. And I believe that the perfect planner does exist for you all. But it will not be the same one. One solution doesn't fit everyone in every situation. My solution won't be the same as yours. But my experience of getting to what I think is the perfect planner, I hope could well help you. But so does it exist? Yeah, I'm pretty certain it does exist, because I've been through this cycle myself. But what becomes the perfect planner might change over time, as your own circumstances changes over time. But if you've experienced the sort of thrill of achieving that first time round, of course it becomes easier next time round. You'll know what to adjust and see what it does. So if it does exist, where can you get one? Can I just walk into a shop and buy one? Well, maybe you can. We'll discover. And how do you decide? Well, I'll hopefully cover that as well. But do you need a planner that's, like a TARDIS, bigger on the inside than it is on the outside? We've all seen pictures, I'm sure, of planners that are well stuffed to the gills, to put it simply. People have their various reasons for wanting to carry so much stuff, but you can't beat physics. If it has to be that size, it has to be that size, I suppose. But let's get a bit imaginative now. Would an accordion style cover suit your needs as for a traveller's notebook, i.e. it expands to take in more inserts or contracts when you only want to carry 2 or 3. I don't know of anyone who makes one of those, but I'm sure that this might well happen in the future. You never know. And for a ring bound, how about trombone style rings? They expand as you increase the number of pages in there. Again, I don't think that will work somehow, not particularly easily anyway. But there is a huge variety of planners out there in various forms and what have you, and hopefully we'll try. They're all paper, of course. That is the constant. Paper and pens is the constant thing about them all. It's just how they're made and how they're put together that differs. So what do we need to decide? Well, let's start with this little list here. Size. Does it need to be big? Does it need to be small, or somewhere in between? The actual physical size of the thing is pretty much going to be determined by how much you need to write on each page each day or each week or whatever, and how you're going to carry the thing. Is it going to be carried in a bag, or if you're based in a home office type thing, then carrying it around's less of a problem. And so you might be able to go, the bigger planner might suit you better in that sort of environment, where if you only have small bags or just pockets, then size is going to be an issue. And not everyone likes carrying them in their hand so much these days. What with your bottle of water or your cup of coffee and your mobile phone, you need an extra hand somewhere in amongst all this. Now, how do you decide on what size? Well, my favourite old tip that I keep banging on about is to take some blank sheets of paper, cut them to the size that you're considering, and then, just with pen and ruler or something, pencil and ruler, just rule the thing out in a sort of typical layout and see if all of the stuff that you need to write down, be it tasks, appointments, reminders, etc., fits onto a typical page for either a typical week, a day, or a month, or whatever it is. Some weeks will be less, of course, some weeks more, but the balance will be there somewhere, and you'll know what looks right for you. Of course, if you're going to decorate the page, you might have to allow some extra space for that as well. But there we go. Then we've actually, within the cover itself, we'll have some internal layouts, things to decide, what pockets you need, all these additional things that you can carry with you, be it credit cards, reward cards, that sort of thing, so business cards. How many card slots do you actually need, if any? How many pen loops, and what sort of type of pen loop do you want? I tend to use just a single colour and a pencil, a mechanical pencil. So I can actually get away with one pen loop using one of these multi-pen things, which just has pen and pencil. But quite a lot of you, I'm sure, want separate pens, or fountain pen and pencil, or gelling pen, and all the different sort of varieties there are. We're not all the same. We all have different requirements. And then how are you going to keep the actual planner itself closed to keep everything secure inside? Some people get away with no clasps at all because they're just going to put it straight in a bag. That's fine. Some have poppers, some have an elastic of some different description, or a zip closure even. Not as popular these days, but we do see them. And then what type? Well, this comes down to sort of how that paper is held within the cover, isn't it? So ring bound is sort of your typical sort of Philofaxy, that type of organiser. Disc bound, not so well known, but equally as flexible as ring bound. You can move pages around, you can replace pages and what have you. Strings, strings or elastics, that covers the sort of traveller's notebook that we've all become sort of familiar with. They're quite flexible in, sort of down to sort of booklet level, less so page level, I suppose. And then bound and stitched type books, hardback, softback books, they're great for sort of journals and things. And I know quite a few people that use sort of bound planners as well, so they're not sort of difficult to use. You can get a softback thing, which then goes into a leather cover if you so wish, and then you just replace that part of it each year, so it's not too bad. And then coil bound, of course, you mustn't forget those as well. They tend to be used quite a lot. The big advantage, of course, is you can fold the pages back on themselves, and they sort of take up less desk space that way. So what material, if we're going to have this cover made, what material will it be made out of? Will it be leather or non-leather? People have different preferences for either. Colour, well, we all have our preferences for colour, don't we? Be it bright colours, or as shown in the pictures here, or rather sort of duller, sort of ordinary colours towards the sort of left-hand side of the picture, sort of thing. Some people mix the colours, so it might look sort of fairly plain and quite subdued on the outside, and then you open it up and it's a nice sort of fluorescent, bright and cheerful colour on the inside. There's no reason why you can't do that either. One word of caution I would think is don't get too carried away with colours, because if it looks a little bit too fashionable, you might get a little bit bored with it after using it for a couple of years or so. And of course the final decider, the price. Yes, planners of any sort, they vary in price from a few pounds, a few euros, a few dollars, up to 3-4 figures easily. The sky's the limit almost. But I'm sure there is something within your price range that fits your needs somewhere there. There is plenty of scope and plenty of people out there making things to come up with something that will fit your price bracket, and then you might even have a choice within that even. So don't think that that's going to be a real hard line decider. So does your planner have to perform more than one function? I know a lot of people that use mix the sort of wallet, carrying money and bank cards and that sort of thing with their planner. And this picture here shows a Philofaxy Morton being used as a wallet. And that shallow zip pocket on the left there is perfect for fishing coins out. He says, speaking from experience, you don't want too deep a pocket to hold coins in, otherwise it don't become difficult to get out of quickly at the sort of cash till. But it's got, just looking at that layout, it's got sufficient card slots and sort of slip pockets and what have you to hold cash and cards and coins. So it lends itself very well to that. People mix planners and notebooks, for if you've got various projects on the go at once, then, it's a perfect solution, isn't it? Mixing your notes with your, plans and tasks and things. Or even, your journal and what have you. Journals, sometimes a lot of people don't like journaling on loose leaf paper, so they prefer more of a bound solution to that. I've even seen a ring bound organiser made with rings and with elastics, or with a pocket to tuck in a bound planner in the back cover. Looked a little bit odd, but it worked, and the person that had it made, I'm sure, is most probably still using it today. The internal layout, again, it's if you're buying something ready-made, then of course you've got the choice of buying the one you like the look of. But if you're having something designed, then you've got a bit more flexibility into what the internal layout is. And as you can see from these pictures, there is a huge variety of ways, just in the orientation of the credit card slots and how many there is, and whether you have zip pockets or you have a popper pocket or whatever. Sometimes it's, don't get too carried away, because all these additional things obviously add to the cost, and they of course will add to the bulk and the weight of the thing as well, potentially reducing the amount of paper you can carry if you go too mad. But there's some sort of intriguing little solutions. If you look at the two pictures in the bottom right hand sort of quarter of this slide, the one on the end, the green one, has a pen slot rather than pen loop, which is different. It sits in the spine, which might not suit everyone, but that's a thing the designer chose to do. Then the one in the very bottom right, shows two pen loops, but not going in the same direction, which is a curious thing when you first see it. But when you actually realise why it's been done that way, it's to make sure that the pens don't clash with each other when there isn't so much paper. They sort of interlock, sort of thing. But they're at the same height on the side. They're just sort of point in different directions just to sort of solve a problem, if you like. But as you can see, there is so many variations, and I've only shown a small variety of them here. Most of these, I think, from memory, were A5 ones, but I think the top left-hand corner, I think, is a personal one. And so that the actual physical size of the planner will influence some of the design factors, of course. Well, there are sort of a set of design rules, very few, as you can see, particularly when you go custom. Obviously, if you go for one with a ring mechanism in it, then the person that's going to make your organiser either you have to supply the ring mechanism in full to them, or they must have it in stock, or it must actually be one that's actually made at the moment. There's no point in asking for, incredibly large size if they're not made for that page size. So there we go. And second one, I think, is very valid. You must be prepared to pay a little bit extra for, a custom design item, because there will be more work involved in it. But if you don't have rings in it, then, pretty much there are no rules apart from, paying extra for it, or paying the going rate for the actual item you end up with, sort of thing. Now, I've been asked quite a lot, so will it cost me a lot of money to have, a good design? Well, this is a case, this particular example here is a standard off-the-shelf Philofax, and there was a couple of little design features on it that I thought were quite clever, in that without actually having to open the organiser, it's got a couple of pockets in the front cover itself that you can put, as you can see, business cards into, or a rail ticket or something like that, a season ticket. Fairly secure, because it's, the actual pockets are quite tight. And then in the back cover, it has a full height pocket, which, I've shown my passport being popped in there, but because the actual strap itself goes over the pocket, it actually sort of protects the contents from falling out, sort of thing. And as you can see, this isn't a all fully leather organiser. I wouldn't say it was the perfect design, far from it, but there are elements of this particular one that I thought were quite good, yet it only costs, I think it was about £40 or £50 at the time when it came out. But you might be able to pick up little things from other existing designs that will help you, decide on your final design. Now, of course, the actual design of your planner, or the one you purchase, will depend to some extent on how much paper you're carrying, being it, a huge stack of it or whatever. With rings and discs, rings certainly have a sort of a design capacity. Now, we always measure, or we always quote ring size, or I certainly quote ring size, as the actual internal diameter of the rings, going horizontally across them, because that's effectively the capacity. But if you look in the manufacturer's catalogue for the rings, they will quote a paper capacity of around about 3 or 4 millimetres less than the actual ring internal diameter size. So 25 mil rings would hold round about sort of 21, 22 millimetres thickness of paper and dividers and all the rest of it. Why is there a limit, you might ask? It's to make sure that the paper that's actually on the inside of the rings, when inserted, doesn't exceed a certain size, where it's the actual paper on the inside of the ring starts pushing the rings open if you put too much in. I've actually seen that actually happen. But so that's rings. But when it comes to travellers' notebooks, they have a sort of a capacity limit, I suppose. You can keep going, of course, but then the thicker the thing becomes, the less width there is in the cover to protect the actual notebooks. And so the notebooks start to hang out over the edge, and rather that sort of defeats the actual object of why you've got a leather cover there in the first place, and not just carrying the notebooks as they are, sort of thing. So there is a sort of a limit in some senses for a traveller's notebook, and most suppliers of those will actually give you some indication of how many inserts that or notebooks you can put in. But of course, if you're going to use, that's going to vary depending on paper thickness and how many pages there are and that sort of thing. So worth asking around and actually looking at people who have already got a particular one that you're interested in, maybe. And then finally, if we're looking at the size of a bound book or coil bound planner, then some of the coil bound planner suppliers do give the option, I think, to specify whether you have a large or small coil for the actual same number of pages, because it will depend. If you're an avid sticker washi tape user, of course, you're adding to the overall thickness of the page, each page sort of thing. So over a period of time, the whole that stack of paper is going to get thicker and thicker throughout the year. So there needs to be some allowance for that on the size of coils used. Now, what paper? Now, this is an age-old problem. Will my preferred pen work with the paper I'm using? Or if you don't have a preferred pen and you like a particular size of paper or a particular type of paper, colour of paper even, then you might have to find a pen that works with that. You might have to be a bit more flexible on what pens you look for, sort of thing. So it's potentially it's a compromise, but it's nice to be able to test out these things before you actually make the big purchase, if possible. Maybe ask for some paper samples to actually try out. But if you're printing your own, again, it's a similar sort of thing. Will the paper you wish to print on work with your particular office printer or whatever? So, it's not a sort of simple answer just to print your own, because you end up with the same problem. You still have to find pens that work with that paper, but maybe less of an issue. I'm not sure, but I certainly have found that when I print my own inserts, I've come unstuck a couple of times with using inkjet printers. Whilst you get nice print quality, the ink doesn't fix so well, particularly if you're using these friction-based, friction pens and what have you. Want to rub something out, then the inkjet ink also starts to smudge. But there we go. So, where are you going to buy? If you finally decide on the perfect planner and what it would look like in your own head and in your many sketches that you produce, where are you going to actually buy one from? Well, as I said, there's a huge number of brands out there. If you just look around, there's no end, and I can't even list them now because they're constantly changing. But in terms of making custom designed ones, well, there's certainly quite a lot of smaller companies now making custom designed items. Some of them do sort of standard off the shelf models that would more or less fit your needs in most cases, or they'll give you options that you can either add or subtract to a particular sort of standard sort of design that they do. Or there are a few that will go, let you sort of just literally send in a drawing with all the measurements on and all the rest of it, for whichever type of planner it is, and they'll actually make it. They'll give you a price for it, of course, first, and then offer to make it for you after you've paid the bill. Van der Spek in Holland or the Netherlands will certainly fit into that category. I've had myself a few custom items made by them to my own design, and wonderful results at the end of it. And you just want to keep going back and doing it again. It does get a bit expensive if you keep doing that, of course. But or let's go one stage on. Could you make your own? Of course you could. Anything's possible. You just look around on YouTube. You'll find loads of great videos there for making your own accessories and your own covers for travelers' notebooks, and they're dead easy to do. I've made one myself, and there's a lot of satisfaction in making your own, because you get to choose, how many strings are in it and all this sort of thing. You can actually buy the leather pre-cut as well, so it's the minimum amount of cutting involved with sharp implements and what have you. So don't give up that idea that you can't make your own. It's a bit harder when you want to include lots of pockets and things, of course, but for simple things, why not give it a go? You might learn a new skill, and it's not going to cost you a huge amount of money to actually go down that route to start with. It might serve as a good prototype for something that you get professionally made later on. And as this talk originally was presented to a European, but primarily European audience, I did add this sort of catch-all at the end here, that purchases from outside the EU will be subject to extra fees. That's sort of when you import something from, say, the US or Australia or somewhere like that, you will end up having to pay VAT, import duty, handling fees and what have you, which can take the sweetness off your, say, $100 planner purchase. It might suddenly become sort of €150 or £150 by the time you've paid all those extra fees and what have you. Not pleasant, but that's just a sort of a warning, as it were. So I hope you've enjoyed the sort of talk in commas. If you want to contact me for any reason at all, to discuss your own planner requirements, your own design ideas, or you want to check out stuff that I've done myself, you'll find me on the web at Philofaxy.com and travelersnotebooktimes.com. I'm on Instagram, as shown. You can contact me by email, and I'm also on the dreaded Facebook as well. You can contact me that way as well. And if you have any questions, by all means, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Or, as I said, contact me direct. It's just as easy. Anyway, thank you for watching and listening.